and gentlemen, welcome back to a journey of a Whitefeather, but this is a chat with Jay on behalf of the 1111 Spiritual Transit podcast with Jackie Lyons and myself, seen on TikTok every Monday. And we have the lovely Shirely Tafari. If I've got it right, have I got that right? Hopefully.
That's correct, Jay.
Oh, I've done it. I'm very proud of myself. There you go. Fantastic. And she's come on board to talk about her spiritual journey. And we're really looking forward to speaking with her because it's been about we're looking to get some of your websites and all that other up and running, so you can talk a little bit about what your spiritual journey is, where you've come from, where you're going, and some of your beautiful gifts that we've been having a look on your form about. And it's a welcome to you. How's everything going?
Oh, everything's doing awesome.
And
Yes,
which part of the world you from?
I live currently in New Mexico in the United States of America.
Awesome. Mexico. That's our second one from Mexico. The last two have been from
New
Mexico.
Mexico. New Mexico.
Oh, New Mexico. Okay, so we're about. So I love professional wrestling, and I get an idea of where everything is. Whereabouts is New Mexico located in America, roughly?
Well, it's close to Texas. Texas is below us, and it's in the southwestern part. So Mexico's not too far away. Near California, it's that part of area of the United
Fantastic.
States. A lot of deserts,
A lot of
that
deserts.
kind
Oh,
of,
well, that's very spiritual, isn't it?
yes.
It's very, very spiritual. So let's talk about your journey and talking about where you're going, what you've been through, and how you're looking to help people in the world. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you start? How did it all start? Spiritual awakening, anything like that? The floor is yours.
Well, Jay, I really found that for myself, my spiritual connection is so close to my culture. So, as an African being, that I found the way to express my spirituality best was through connecting to my culture and learning about African spirituality.
Oh, okay.
And
Excellent.
so that was the key for me because a lot of the times we as African beings aren't taught about um, how our people worship and how we express ourselves. And it comes out in various different ways in the African community. If you look at dance, even
That's huge,
in
isn't
some of
it?
the movements that the kids are doing in hip hop and in a lot of the different dance movements, you see tribal dances being coming through the youth, and I just felt like I was not being told the truth when I was going to church on a regular basis,
Okay.
and I felt very much lied to.
And in
And
what way did you feel? What way did you feel lied to? Because you said it's got a connection to your African heritage, and also the culture of
well,
being
even if
Maori.
you look at it, even if you look at the whole concept of a white Jesus, um, historically we know that all of the people in the Bible were not white. They were they talk about the Nile River, they talk about the Euphrates, um places that they went to, they were talking about in the Bible were all in Africa, in the continent of Africa. And so this is something that's not taught about when you go to a white Christian church. So, and they even have pictures of a white man with blue eyes, and depicted as Jesus. And so when I was in graduate school, I really came to understand that some of these things were just not adding up, that there was no reference to Africa in the church. Um, there was no reference to people like me. There were no African beings of leadership in the church. Um, so, or maybe even women. So it was just a disconnect. So I started searching, and the so funniest thing, I was in a PhD studying counseling psychology, and I was interested specifically on racism and oppression and things that are relevant to my experience growing up in America. And so I just felt like even there was a disconnect. I wasn't getting the full story in the school. So I decided that the PhD program was not for me. I felt like I was not getting the full truth. I didn't feel supported, even though I was even working with African American professors. Um, I just didn't feel like it was the place for me to discover my African spirituality, even though that was what I wanted to study. So
Okay.
um, I decided to drop out of the PhD program, and so I dropped out of the program, and I went to a local health food store in the area. At the time, I was living in Bloomington, Indiana, and so I went to the food store, the health food store, and I saw this person with their head wrapped, and um, I could see he was a person of color. So I just asked him. I said, "Are you Muslim?" And he said, "No, I'm African." And and I said, "Oh," and I was just so struck by his appearance and um, the whole, just the appearance alone struck me. And I went on shopping, and I was completely floored. I turned around and I saw him again, and so I said, I just dropped out of a PhD program, and his natural thing that he did was he hugged me, and I just was completely floored by this hug. And once years later, he became my husband. But and I said I wanted to study African spirituality, and he said, "Well, I can teach you that." And so that put me on the path right there. So my real introduction to African spirituality was outside of school and outside of the church. And so he introduced me to the Rastafari movement. And so I learned about Nabingi ceremony, drumming and chanting, and that in the church they talk about waiting for Jesus to come back and save them. And so Rastas don't have that belief system. We know that Haile Selassie is already the reincarnation of Yeshua Christos, and he already came back. And so that's the difference between the thoughts of Christianity and the Rastafari movement. And so, and there's also other things, like it's basically a Judeo Christian um, spiritual practice, but it involves self awareness and a heightened sense of, I would say, inner knowing and guidance for the spiritual life. Meditation or walking living meditation all 24 hours. So we don't just meditate in a sitting meditation, but have a meditation 24 hours a day. So it's a constant download of how we are connected to the Most High.
Okay, so in that case, if you're doing it 24 hours a day, is it like you're keeping a permanent connection upstairs? Is that how it works, or?
Right, and we know that the Almighty indwells within inside ourselves, so we don't think of it as outside of ourselves or up or down or any of that, but inside of ourselves.
Because
So
yeah, because a
that
lot of
internal connection.
because a lot of the teachings with Wayne Dyer and a few others, Victor Otto and a few others that have come across, Aaron Doherty, a few others there, they've always said the power's within you, and they always say that. But with your beliefs within the African culture and the beliefs is basically when you do connect to source, you become. They always say you are source, but you got to actually connect to source as well to become that, and you are the source of your own power. That's universal, isn't it? With a lot of stuff, but it's been really highlighted in your culture.
Right, precisely. And so we really endorse that man and God is one. So we don't consider ourselves um,
Separate,
human
yeah, separate.
separate. Yeah, we
Yeah.
don't consider ourselves separate and consider ourselves not only gods and goddesses, but kings and queens in the kingdom. So basically we see there's a lot
Okay.
of Christians that feel that it's um what would I say, like kind of blasphemous to believe that one's a god or a goddess, but we embrace that.
I think it's a lot of people. It's basically I don't know whether it's society saying you shouldn't put yourself on a pedestal and you couldn't call yourself a god, but in the way that you're speaking, as we are all source if we connect to it properly. You know what I mean? So it's not a case of being egotistical and saying, "Look, I'm a god, I'm this." There's a different story if you're not connected properly. You know, there's obviously people who aren't grounded enough, and they go into their godlike session with the couple of chakras, not with the lower chakras not being balanced. But understanding the
Well,
whole thing there, is that close to what you guys believe in as well?
well, we're all gods and goddesses, even if we're not conscious of it. So a lot of people are not conscious of their godly or goddess status. So we're gods and goddesses. Some people don't acknowledge that and behave in ungodly ways.
Yep.
But we all come from source and we all are perfect in our imperfections. So
Look,
in that,
yeah, keep going. Sorry, it's just dropped out.
yes, so in that being that a connection is great to cultivate, and that's what I did. I started a cultivation of meditation, prayer, and I eventually started yoga. And these are some self care practices that I implemented in my business to help women of color and women of influence to um, access those self-care practices that are so crucial, because what I found was sometimes people are thinking they're having a mental health breakdown when actually they're having a spiritual experience that's not explained in the realms of um, that's not explained well in the mental health field because they're not equipped to deal with it.
Hmm. Interesting you say that because there's a lady, a friend of mine, Ira, Morphe, she's over in Peru and she actually does a lot of work within that because she believes that people who do have a form of mental illness or some sort of issue, however you want to put it, there are obviously chemical imbalances and medical treatments here, but in the core of it, you're actually separating yourself from source and separating yourself, and your spirit is being, well, I guess, unbalanced or agitated or not imbalanced or whatever it may be, to cause these imbalances and cause this issue. And the other thing is, you are trying to connect to source, so you are going and having those higher thoughts, and I guess higher experiences that can't be explained, it can only be put down to, say, schizophrenia or whatever it may be.
Well, I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and um, what I find is that sometimes these things, such as what happens, for instance, when a person initially has a spiritual awakening, is that they start noticing synchronicities. So they're starting to notice these synchronicities. Just imagine waking up in the morning and having a song in one's head, and then going to the grocery store and the same song is playing over the loudspeaker. So
Well, angel numbers are the classic one, aren't they? Like, you see numbers. I mean, they're the big ones. Like your 111s, your 333s. I've been seeing them for the last year, particularly. And I would say that that's when they're telling you that you're on the right track. Keep going. Yeah, but it's not easy being what we are. I'll tell you that right now. Where we are, it's not an easy to put yourself into the emotion and be that kind of person, because you're fighting. Exactly. Sometimes you have to fight who you are in some ways, because you have to sort of still connect with the physical beings here, which is just to live, I guess.
well, the application of spirituality um, is one of the highest forms. Like, we can all go into the mountain and meditate, but how beneficial would that be to society if we were all in the
Medit
caves meditating? So, and also we wouldn't be applying our spiritual practices in that cave. So
it's what we're
it's the
doing now.
application.
Yes, absolutely. So I look at it. What you're saying is very, very well, it's pretty much spot on from what a lot of the people that I speak to, that they're actually trying to apply these ones, because we have been disconnected as a society from the earth or the universe and all those other things, if you want to put it that way. And we want to basically get people aware and reconnect. So some of the stuff that we're doing, that's why I do these interviews, to get people, your story out there, just so people can listen.
Right, right. So, what I do in my practice is to bring that awareness that um, mental health issues or mental health challenges um, can be helped with guidance, of course. And mental health issues present differently for different cultures. And so, even depression with African American women, if you look at depression, it might just present as irritability, not full blown. Somebody might consider them rude or crass, or consider that, oh, that's the angry black woman, or those are stereotypes that are really prevalent in the United States about black women, that they're angry, that they're aggressive, that they have an attitude. Well, some of those, it could be that they are irritable because they're really going through a depressed state, and it's getting misdiagnosed, or saying the person is non-compliant, the person is hostile, or the client is, all those things, or just the way they present. Or even if somebody says, or a Native American talks about having a connection with their ancestors, or
Yep.
any of those things are not really viewed as something that is seen rationally. And so, by white society. And I know, as an African being, that I do have connection with my enlightened ancestors and have conversations with them, and I'm not unstable mentally, or it's just that spiritual connection, because we know spirit never dies, and we know that we can access those spiritual connections um, on a consistent basis and still function in society very well and successfully. So those are all things that if you have a client, I mean, a clinician or a therapist or a counselor that is a person of color and is in touch with their culture, um, then they will be culturally competent enough not to misdiagnose these things. Even looking at hearing spirits,
Yep.
that's common. That's common for somebody who's spiritually attuned.
We always feel like, I guess, as I said, it's being disconnected from the earth, and as you said, that's exactly right. So we're going back to those things. Everything's medical, which is fine, and we're led to believe that. But there's also another side of it, which you look at for what we're doing, the being aware of your spirituality and where you are in life, and what you're actually doing, your shadow work, which I work with a lot. Um, it's very, very interesting. I'm glad we got you on board. That just quickly, that piece behind you, is that a homemade African piece that you've got there? Or?
Actually, I bought it, but it's just a mat. It's a, if you can see, it's an African mask that to decorate, but it's also as a symbol of my heritage, and how back in the continent that they put on paint and all that stuff like that to um, embody the ancestors and be in spirit. But
Fantastic, fantastic. So we've got about 5 minutes to go in this first part. The second part, we're going to be talking a little bit more about you as a practitioner. So that's real. That's a great insight to what you're talking about, because it's interesting that you've put the cultural side of things in to what a lot of people believe that is happening to people, especially when we become awakened to the issue of us being disconnected, which is amazing. It's an amazing thing at what you're doing. So it's really, really good. Tell us a little bit more about what, as a client, how did you, when you started your business, how did you know when to start your business, and how you knew where you were going? You found your purpose. Now, how did you move into that frame of mind, into that business side?
well, basically, I've always been interested in psychology as a young child. Um, I was the type that people always used to come to me about problems. Even my parents used to come to me saying, we have this issue. Can you help me? I'd be at the dining table, doing a little counseling, marital counseling for my family, even at 12 years old. And it always just came very naturally to me that people gravitated toward me and asked for advice about their personal issues, friends. And so it was a natural career. I thought I was going to become a professor because I really was interested in research at the time when I was in academia. But then after a while, I noticed that I didn't like the lifestyle of being an academician, being that, the hours that they keep and always working. And I wanted a full life with a family and
Yep,
balance, work life balance, which led me to, um,
doing your
as a
healing.
clinician,
Yep,
yeah, as a clinician, even there's a high burnout rate with a lot of therapists because there's long hours and seeing people all day long, and then um, So, with that being, I noticed that a lot of therapists don't get a lot of support in helping them to navigate work-life balance, and then I incorporated that into other professions, other professional areas. For instance, people in leadership positions and women. And then, since I have a degree in multicultural counseling, that's what my master's is in. It was natural that I gravitated toward helping women of color in leadership positions to obtain work-life balance.
That sounds really good. Because the concept of you bringing your African culture into it is amazing. That's where a lot of people get interested in. Say, I'm into the Native American culture, obviously, having a big, strong connection to past lives, to spirit with regards to the Native Americans. And that's where I sort of led into with my readings and stuff like that. I do the tarot readings and stuff with the Native American animal medicine cards. So there's a lot of stuff that I
That's
move
awesome.
and moving into the shadow work as well, which I did as well, which I lived and still live. So it's still very, very hard looking at, portals and all those kind of things. Questions to ask you. Do you go into astrology, crystals, the whole lot, or do you channel into certain things?
Um, I dabble a little bit in Mahabot readings, which is a Burmese astrology readings, just to get a sense of what planets people gravitate to and energies. For instance, my chart, I'm pretty centered in Jupiterian
That's good.
Jupiter,
Jupiter's good. It's the most positive
and so
planet.
that means, yeah, so that means that I like to seek knowledge, and these are people that are generally advisors or educators or even priests or those type of professions. So it's nice to know what my clients' birth date is, so I can get a sense of the kind of energy I'm working with each client. But I might share that with a client, but uh, that's only if they're open to that kind of the things. And I also do I Ching readings, or I Ching, some people say, which is a form of spiritual divination.
Okay. Fantastic. So what we're going to do is we're going to break now for about 5 minutes. So we go into the next part of this, which is basically talking about what you offer as a therapist, which is exactly what people want to hear. They've heard your background.
Okay.
Ama- Amazing, amazing. This is great. As I said, this is exactly why I do what I do, because we're getting different people from different aspects. People following the African American African cultures and putting their practices in there. There's different practices and different cultural theories that all come in, which people need to know, which is great. So, guys, we're going to break for a couple of minutes. We'll come back with part two with Shirley. It's been amazing, fantastic. It's just as I said, this is why I do what I do, to meet new people, which is great, to get their story out there, and we talk about what they're doing to help the world. So we'll be back with part two very, very soon with Shirley.